Hey guys, it's Ryan here with HobbiesofaMan once again, and today we're doing our last Frieren arc review for the time being. This is the first class mage exam arc, or the first class examination arc, or I think there's another name for it, but I can't remember it. But basically it's like the big culmination of the anime, if you guys have seen it. So the author here is Kanehiro Yamada, the artist is Tsukasa Abe, and the publisher is Viz. It's a Shugakukan title, and it's a Shonen Sunday title specifically, so it's the one that has the little S's on the top of the volume. The graphic here is shonen, of course, and the genres here are fantasy, slice of life, coming of age, and adventure. And obviously it does have an adaptation, since I've already mentioned it before, and it's awesome. The more that I do these videos, the more that I really solidify my opinion that maybe it is best to start with the anime and then come back to this, because the anime just gives you a little bit more atmosphere than the manga does. Although the storytelling is beautiful and meaningful and lovely in Frieren, in the manga, maybe it is a little bit about, it hits a little bit harder, is what I'm trying to say, if you watch the anime. And this is different from my feelings on something like Delicious in Dungeon, where I think that Delicious in Dungeon, the anime, is better than the manga, because it moves quicker through the initial storytelling, which is, kind of not great of me to say, because I am someone that prefers the source material overall. But I think that sometimes adaptations can actually enhance storytelling, and this is mildly true for Frieren, and it's definitely true for Delicious in Dungeon. So yeah, ratings wise for this arc, I would say is a 5 out of 5. I think it's great. I think it's my favorite arc in the story so far, but it is the most kind of like shonen or battle shonen or traditional shonen kind of arc that we have in the story so far. And I don't know if that remains the same, or if it really changes up after this and it goes back to that kind of like travelogue type of story, or what, right? But I think that this is probably some of the most traditional feeling kind of stuff, and it's very enjoyable. I do quite like it. So yeah, the premise of this arc is that the team, which is Frieren, Fern, and Stark, have arrived at Oberst, the city of magic, and they are here to go to the Mage Academy, or the Mage Association, and sign up for the first class mage examination. And when they get there, they learn that the leader of the association is a woman that Frieren knows from her youth, who's called Serie, who is a elf like Frieren, and she knows immediately that she's never going to pass this exam because Serie doesn't like her, and she believes that Fern will still be able to pass, and so they continue to go through this, right? And the whole arc is basically about all of the different tasks and assignments and situations that they find themselves in as they go through this examination, right? So it's very similar to something like the tuning exam arc, or the sports festival arc and stuff like that, right? So if you're a fan of those types of things, I'm sure you'll be a fan of this. So let's get into the plot line here at this point. So the team arrives at Oberst. Frieren explains how even mages like themselves, like Frieren and Fern, can still lose. Then we transition over to a different character who's called Ubel, who is literally called Blade, and her ability is that she can cut anything, who saves, or actually starts killing a bunch of bandits, and she does this pretty often, so much so that one day, when she's also about to ambush some bandits, Kraft, the elf, shows up. He talks to her, and he saves her from the bandits. And he saves her from the bandits because he knows that she would kill them, and he doesn't think that she should, right? She doesn't necessarily have to do it, so what the hell's the point, right? Then he makes her go to the Magic Association, right? And so once we come back to Frieren and the team, we see that the Magic Association is set to start the exam in 2 months, and so for 2 months they just hang out and study and kind of just enjoy themselves, right? And so we get to see a few minutes of this, like a few snippets of this, but then the 2 months pass quite quickly, and we get to meet the proctor, whose name is Genum, I think, or Genau, and he's the first proctor. He introduces us to a bunch of characters like Werbel and Duncan and Ubel and Lawin and Kane, and these are all characters that are going to be prevalent throughout this arc. And it turns out the Frieren has been teamed up with Lawin and Kane, and Fern has been teamed up with Ubel and this guy that has glasses, whose name I can't remember. And the first test is that 3-man teams must catch a stele, which is a magical bird that has supersonic flight capabilities. It has like a steel body, and it's hyper aware of mana. So it's very difficult to catch it for wizards, right? And it's basically like a snitch from Harry Potter, right? So in the Harry Potter movies and in the books, the snitch is known to be like a little ball, right? But if you dig into the lore a little bit more, if you read the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them book, which is the reason why the movies came out, you learn that the snitch was actually a little special bird that was endangered because it was used for Quidditch games, and it would usually die during Quidditch games. And the way that the snitch is described is basically exactly the same as the stele. And it's pretty cool. So I like that. I think it's enjoyable to see a lot of these kind of things either pull from the same initial source, which might be like something from Germany, or is pulling from Harry Potter. I'm not really sure, right? And so Frieren is tasked with basically dealing or having to play at mom between Lawin and Kana because they are constantly bickering. And we can learn that they're actually friends, and they've been friends for a long time, but they just have a very specific type of relationship, which is that they're always fighting, right? And since the stele is too sensitive to mana, it's not easy to catch it. We see that Frieren has a bird catching spell that she uses to save Kana from a magic monster that's like bird shaped. And she explains to us that this is folk magic, that this is magic that was used by people before wizards were really a thing, before formal instruction was made, and that it works with any object that is bird shaped, because folk magic is a little bit less finicky. It has a lot less rules, right? And so now that they have this ability, they have to figure out a way to catch a stele with it, right? And we see that Fern manages to use the same spell to catch the stele quite easily. She manages to get Ubel and the guy with the glasses to distract people around them. And I think that she just finds a stele randomly and just casts a spell on it very quickly because she's a fast caster, and they get the bird very, very easily, right? So then we get to see that Frieren is kind of just scouting the woods, trying to figure out different places and different areas and different things about it, as Kana and Lawin explain their magic. So Kana has water magic and Lawin has ice magic. So they are wizards that depend on their environment a bit more than other people, right? Like Frieren is a very offense and defense kind of magic user, so she doesn't really depend on the environment, but Lawin and Kana do. And they're such good friends because their magic synergizes very well, right? If Kana can use the water, Lawin can freeze the water that she uses, right? So it's very cool. Between the two of them, they become a single waterbender, if that makes sense. And then Fern's team has to fight Wurbol's team, and they actually beat them pretty easily because Fern is better at offensive magic than the woman on Wurbol's team, and Wurbol gets beat by Ubel, and I think the other guy just gets beat by the glasses guy very easily. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but Fern's team is just way too good at fighting compared to Wurbol's, even though Wurbol is actually a member of the Magic Association or something. He's like a member of the army that fights against demons at the edge of the territories. So he's very good at fighting, but he's not necessarily looking to fight them right now. So he was just trying to get the bird, right? And so he did it. So he manages to get away from them, right? And then we see that Frieren gets Kana and Lawin to fuck up all the water sources. They infuse their mana into them in order to minimize the places where the stele can go, because if they sense mana, they're not going to go near it, right? And so this forces all of the birds to go away from the major water sources, and it basically lets Frieren set up at a small water source that they control and just sit there, minimize her mana basically to the point of turning it off, and just wait for the bird to show up. And that's basically their plan. They're going to be very patient about it. They're going to be very stealthy hunters. And this also disrupts everyone else's abilities or everyone else's plans, because now they can't go to water sources to find stele. They have to find them in the forest. And that's significantly harder than just waiting them out at a place where they have to go, right? So this is when we get introduced to Denken and Lawfin and Richter, who are basically our villains for this arc, if that makes sense. we get a lot of time spent with Denken explaining Frieren's plan to Laufin, who doesn't really understand it. They find her at a small pond where she doesn't exude mana. And eventually the stele does land on Frieren's shoulder. And when it does this, she uses the bird spell and catches it. Denken manages to sense Frieren's ability at this point, and then he gets Laufin, who uses strengthening enhancing magic the same way that the girl from last time, Linne, did, in order to speed up and become basically like a, I guess like something between Tenten from Naruto and Rock Lee from Naruto, right? And she has like a little Chun-Li kind of outfit. And she goes in, she rushes, she steals the bird, and then Frieren decides to fight them, essentially. But before we get around to that point, Werbel manages to catch a stele too, because his special ability, his special spell that he's really good at, is a catching spell or a control spell, where he just freezes you in place, right? And he's quite good at it, right? Kanao and Sensei, who is the second proctor, chat. And Sensei is concerned that the dome around this area is going to break because Frieren is in this place, and she knows that she's better than basically anyone around, right? And Gano kind of ignores her. He's like, no, nothing's gonna happen, it's whatever, right? Frieren fights Denken at this point. Richter fights both of the girls, and Denken and Frieren agree on a single principle. Magic is used for the joy of it, or magic should be studied for the joy of it. And then Frieren beats Denken quite easily. She threatens him, and then when Laufin tries to step in to save him, she beats Laufin as well. And she gets the stele back, and then Frieren breaks the barrier around this region of the forest, and then this allows Lawin and Kana to access water from around them, right, from the rain. And this means that they can beat Richter very, very easily. Then the girls move on, and they just go hang out at the ending spot. And then we follow Denken as he and Richter go and fist fight some guys to get a stele, because this team, I think one of their members died, and so they can't win at all. But they still want to keep the stele because they want to make it so it's harder for other teams to win, right? And so Denken, no longer having any mana available to him, just starts beating the shit out of them. And it's pretty funny because he's like this ancient old man. He has kind of like a dwarfish look to him, although he's not a dwarf. And it's just funny to see like this old man just be like, okay, it's time to beat the shit out of these people. And it's pretty fun. And so the teams that pass here are Fern's team, Frieren's team, Werbel's team, Denken's team, and two other teams that are not really all that important, but some of the characters in them end up being relevant later on. So the teams interact between tests. Mostly, we get to see them have different dinner and kind of like snack party kind of moments between Fern, Frieren, and the two girls, right? Lawin and Kana. And then we get to see that Frieren's team meets with Richter and Laufin and Denken for dinner, and they just kind of have fun and enjoy themselves, right? And so the second exam starts at this point, and it's a bit of a dungeon spelunking kind of situation. And this actually ends up being the real test throughout this whole story, because the third arc, or the third test, isn't really all that important, right? So the dungeon spelunking starts, and Frieren and Fern team up. Sensei goes with them because she thinks that they'll be the fastest ones to get to the center of the dungeon, and they actually end up doing slow and steady progress. They just kind of have fun. Frieren is someone that really likes to take her time with things, of course, because she's an elf. She exhibits time differently, right? She sees time differently, and so she just kind of goes around, kind of almost lackadaisically, lackadaisically, right? I think that's the word. She just kind of goes around, just kind of having fun, enjoying herself. And Sensei kind of gets upset. She's like, damn, maybe I shouldn't have gone with them. But they make good progress, and they get to the bottom of the place quite quickly afterwards, right? And it's pretty interesting how they go through this, right? Because at the same time, we get to see that Denken and a bunch of extra people explore together. One of them gets forced out, and then Werbel's with his buddies, right? Then Ubel and Land, who is the guy with the glasses, have to fight dark clones of themselves. And this is when we see what the problem of this dungeon is, that there's a monster who creates dark copies of all of the people that are inside the dungeon at any given time. And so everyone has to fight against themselves or people that are like them that they know to an extent, right? And the last one, the most important one, is Frieren's clone. And the thing is that Frieren's clone is like Frieren without any of her personality, right? And so it has all of her weaknesses, but it doesn't have her restraint. And this is concerning because Frieren is probably the most dangerous wizard alive besides Seri. But Seri is like in charge of the association, so she's not a problem, right? And so we get to see Ubo fight Ubo. Land saves her because Ubo did a bit of a... She assumed that Land was going to save her because he's a nice person, and this ends up being a good thing. So we'll have to see if that actually ends up, becoming relevant later. But it's not really possible to tell at this moment. And so they continue on. Everyone meets at the end of the dungeon right before the door that allows them to go kill the monster that is being protected by Frieren's clone, right? So at this point, everyone tries to figure out a way to kill her, a strategy, and then Frieren and Fern are the ones that have to do it. Frieren because she's the only one that can handle herself, and Fern because she's the only one that Frieren thinks can kill her. And so they go in, everyone else must fight the other clones in order to avoid them all congregating in this region and having a full-out battle, right? So everyone else that's alive, besides Frieren and Fern, go off to fight in like 2-man teams, right? Or 3-man teams. And Frieren has to fight herself. And this is probably the coolest bit of storytelling that we see here, or the coolest battle that we see. In the anime, it's awesome, and in the manga, it's also really, really cool. And Fern needs to find an opening. Basically, Frieren has a bit of a tick where she has a little bit of a lag in her aura or her concentration or something, where when she switches from defensive to offensive spells, she drops her mana detection. And so this is when Fern will strike, and Fern is the only one that can do it because she's the fastest spellcaster, right? And so as she's looking for her opening, she shoots. It's not enough. Ubo has to fight Sensa's clone, and she beats her pretty easily because Ubo's specialty beats Sensa's. Even though Sensa is a very dangerous character to basically anyone else, Ubo has a better matchup against her. And she wins, and then Frieren and Fern get a bigger opening, and Fern manages to kill the clone. Or actually, what happens is that Fern manages to damage the clone enough that it loses its arms, but then doesn't expect Frieren to have such ability with her mana that she can control it without her hands or without her staff. And so Fern gets shoved against the wall, and her staff shatters, and she's pushed against it so badly that Frieren is so concentrated on her, or the clone is so concentrated on Fern, that it doesn't see the actual Frieren shoot the hell out of it. And so they kill the clone. They manage to go and destroy the demon, and they win the test. And so everyone else that is alive also passes, and Fern needs to get her staff fixed. They go to Richter to do it because that's what he focuses on when he's not being a wizard. And this is the end of the second test. The third test turns out to be interviews with Seri, because she realizes that Frieren has thrown off the whole situation, and that the group of characters that are here are actually significantly stronger than usual, and so there needs to be a bit of a different situation going on. So it's an interview with Seri, and she fails 5 people immediately because she doesn't think that they're mentally prepared to be first-class mages. She goes up to Frieren, or Frieren comes up to her, and they discuss and talk about Flamma, who used to be the link that connected them, because Sierra was Flamma's master and Frieren was Flamma's student. And it turns out that Frieren is too peaceful for Seri's taste, and so she doesn't pass. And we also get to have a bit of a moment here where we learn that Seri loves all of her students. She deeply cares about them, even though she's usually disappointed by them in some ways. But she shows that they're special to her by memorizing and remembering all of the spells that they love, right? And this is why she has a bunch of flowers around her when Frieren goes to see her, because that was Flamma's favorite spell. And then Fern gets to see that Sierra's mana is unstable because she does the same thing that Frieren does. She hides her mana, or she condenses it, and so the stuff that comes out is unstable. It warbles a little bit, right? And no one has been able to tell that Sierra does this except for Fern, because she's that good at observing stuff, right? And this impresses Seri, and she tries to become Fern's master, and Fern is like, no, I'm good. Frieren's my master. I don't need you. But she passes anyway. Denkin passes as well. Ubo and Land do as well. And Werble does too. The last person that is important here is Method, who is a female character that was introduced earlier in the story. She doesn't really become that important until the second exam at the end of it. And Method passes because she thinks Sarah is cute. And Sarah is like, well, she's crazy, so I like it. And then that's basically the end here. Frieren and Denken hang out with each other. They have dinner. They have a bit of a ceremony, and then Fern asks Sarah to give her a spell, right? So the ceremony, or the thing that you win out of having passed the Mage exam, is that Sarah will give you one spell from her immeasurable giant collection of grimoires, right? And Fern asks for a laundry spell. And this is funny because that's kind of something Frieren would do as well. And then Frieren fights the old man who is Sarah's currently oldest student, and she beats him, and they move on to the north. And this is the end of the story for now. And it's pretty awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the fight between Frieren and her clone was amazing. And I like the concept here of like, your biggest obstacle is yourself. So what are you going to do about it, right? It really ties into some real life stuff that I've encountered. Last semester I had this class that was about organizational power, right? It was about how people interact with each other and the best way to use the way that people interact with each other to get something out of it, right? It's not really a manipulation class or anything like that. It's about personal gain through understanding the power around you, right? And one of the rules of that, or like one of the main points that we talked about in that class, was in order to advance, you have to get out of your own way. You have to avoid falling into fear and anxiousness and thinking that people don't want to help you. You have to move away from that, because that stops you from asking for help. And if you don't ask for help, no one's going to help you, right? And that was one of the biggest points. And it's not the same, but this is basically the concept here, right? You are your biggest opponent. If you defeat yourself, if you master yourself, you will advance. Like it's not an analogy or a metaphor that works 100% correct, because that's not necessarily the point here, since they beat each other through magic. But the idea, the theme of it is still the same, right? Get out of your own way. Be courageous. Don't be afraid of failure and of asking for help, right? So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was really, really good, right? So yeah, in terms of characters here, we get a Frieren's origin story properly. I think I mentioned it in previous reviews, but basically Frieren was a young elf. She lived in a village with a bunch of other elves, and then suddenly one day the demons attacked. Frieren was the only survivor. She was interested in magic to an extent, but then she was found by Flamma, and Flamma killed 3 demons in front of Frieren, and then Frieren decides to become her apprentice. She wants to learn magic because she likes it, but also because she thinks it'll be valuable to her if demons ever attack again. And Flamma is a wizard that is interested in war, and Sarah is as well. But Flamma wants to end war. She wants to find ways to peacefully, or maybe sneakily, beat the demons. And that is why she is the way she is, right? Why she hides her aura or her mana, why they're sneaky, why they're not all out, in the world at all times trying to fight the demons, right? That's why Frieren is the way she is, because of Flamma. We get to see that Fern passes the exam. We get to meet Kana and Lawin, and Denken, and Sense, and Ubel, and Land. And I think the only characters here that are going to be relevant again are probably Denken and Ubel. Land seems like an interesting character, but nothing about him has been relevant to us that much, right? And Stark basically ends up being a non-existent character for this arc, because it's all about wizard stuff, right? So Stark doesn't get to be here, but I think he does end up having some Yoda moments, some Luke and Yoda moments with some old guy that lives near town, right? So that's it for the characters. In terms of world building, we learned that human magic advances immensely fast. The Mage Association stuff is interesting because it's a new organization, but every 50 to 60 years, they have a different organization. So Frieren kind of doesn't keep track. She just doesn't care. She just will be a wizard. And if she needs to get, accommodations or certifications, she will at that moment. But usually it's not really relevant, right? And we learned about mana control. The older you get, the more mana control you get. And depending on the type of wizard you are, or the type of person or magical user that you are, your mana control is very different, right? So most people can control their mana to an extent in order to shape it into spells, but most people don't really bother with what Fern and Frieren and Flamma and Sarah do, which is condensing their mana, hiding it, and then only pushing some of it out every once in a while. And the most impressive thing to me is that Sarah is basically like a nuke that, like, her magical aura is huge, but it's still veiled or hidden, right? And so her actual aura would be gigantic, but no one can sense it except for Frieren, right? That's pretty cool. And defensive magic, it's explained. It's about redirection. It's about defeating Soul Shock. It's about minimizing the amount of space that you use in order to deflect attacks. And that's why Frieren's so good at it. That's why they always use the little egg shape with all of the little hexagons, because that's the most effective way to use it. It uses the least mana. It's much more contained. It's much more controllable, and it tires you out a lot less, right? So yeah, in terms of artwork and fan service here, the artwork is amazing as always. I really enjoy the spell casting and the fighting between Frieren and Frieren's clone. Ubel is the sexiest looking character that's been introduced so far, and it doesn't really go into anything, but I feel like if she continues to be part of the cast in some way, there might be more moments where we get to see like fan service elements, right? But that's just because she is kind of like a femme fatale type character, right? And it's not necessarily important that it exists or not, but with the introduction of Ubel, it does feel like maybe we are moving a little bit in that direction, right? So yeah, ratings-wise, 5 out of 5. It's awesome. There really isn't too much else to say that I haven't said already about Frieren at this point. I'm very excited to get back to reading more of it, but I'm not sure that I will until after the next season comes out, because I would really like to experience it in anime first. Because the thing is that if I read the manga, by the time the anime comes around, I might not want to read it. So we'll see what happens. Or I might not want to watch it. And I really would be disappointed in that, because I really enjoyed the first season, right? So we'll see what happens. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Frieren. This is the first 60 chapters, which are the same as the first 28 episodes of the anime. Let me know what you thought. Thank you so much for watching, and see you guys later.